If I had to summarize why I love video games so much in a single sentence, it would be, I like clicking buttons and seeing cool things happen on a screen. That's it. I totally understand people who want to feel like they've overcome something when playing a game. It must be the same feeling I get when I learn how to cook a new dish I really like, or how somebody feels learning a new song on the guitar. Or maybe it's the same feeling somebody gets when they finish something challenging like a From Software game. But sometimes you just want to play a game that gives you a fun toolbox to mess around with. Enough mechanics to experiment, but not too many to drown in. That's usually where Kirby fits in for me. Kirby is one of the best-selling and most recognizable video game series ever, and whenever one of his traditional platformers releases, it's usually given a decent amount of attention and a fair shake at reviews. But there's one that, at least to me, didn't get a fair chance. Unlike something like Mario, where the main hook of interest is getting to the end of a level and seeing what obstacles will be in my way, Kirby to me is more about what I did in a level and what it's showing me. A good example is how both series handle blocks. In Mario, a block is either an obstacle or a platform. In Kirby, blocks can be destroyed or used as a weapon against enemies. Of course, experimenting with the copy abilities is the main draw, but sometimes I just want to shoot a star block at an enemy and hear them go. The new age of Kirby seemed to be Return to Dreamland up to Star Allies, and out of those games, Return, Triple Deluxe, and Planet Robobot are all freaking awesome. Getting 100% in those games just doubles the fun instantly. There are so many copy abilities and moves within those copy abilities, and the co-op in Return to Dreamland specifically was always a good time with my friends. But before that new age, there was an experimental age, with games that changed up the core gameplay like Mass Attack, Canvas Curse, and Epic Yarn. It is pretty cool how in the Kirby series you can bundle up some of the games together as like little arcs or sub-series. One of those sub-series is called the Dark Matter Trilogy by fans. The trilogy contains Kirby's Dream Land 2, 3, and 64. Man, they really skipped 61 games to continue the story? Get it? Dreamland 2, I remember getting on Virtual Console from my 3DS and playing the game on a long car ride. I loved how each of the animal companions changed the gameplay and how full of options it felt for a Game Boy game. Game Boy is just one of those systems that pulls the nostalgia out of you even if you didn't grow up with it, but if I'm being honest, there's only maybe like 10 games I'd say are must-plays on it, and a lot of those games have gotten remakes like Metroid 2, Link's Awakening, and the Pokemon games. All been remade, but Dreamland 2 hasn't, so it's still worth checking out. The next game, and the focus of this video, is Dreamland 3. It came out in 1997 in America and 4 months later in Japan, which is kind of weird, that like almost never happens. Even weirder was the Nintendo 64 came out a year before in America and almost 2 years before in Japan. Kirby's Dreamland 3 was kind of doomed to fail, and I wonder how it felt being the people working on this game. Like, imagine clocking into work, going into your office, knowing your game is going to sell like 10 copies because nobody cares about 2D gaming right now. Everybody was busy falling in love with three-dimensional games like Mario 64 and Star Fox 64. To put it into perspective, a little less than 8 months after this game came out in Japan, Ocarina of Time would release. Yeah, that's kinda bullshit. Like, again, imagine going into work, making your 2D Super Nintendo platformer, and then seeing the team in the next room cooking up Ocarina of Time, bro. Despite that, it's obvious that they didn't just phone it in or give up with Dreamland 3. This game hits me immediately with its crayon-inspired art style. A game like Yoshi's Island feels like it's built with colored pencils and magic markers, and Dreamland 3 ups the cuteness level just by focusing on crayons. I can't think of many or any games with this art style. The levels just pop with nice little details like the sunbeams poking through the water's surface, the way these caveman enemies will swat projectiles back at you with their club, or how the orange sky filled with a sunset clashes against the beautiful white clouds. I also love the levels that just have colorful shapes everywhere. I don't know what this aesthetic or style is called, but I love it. It reminds me a lot of the original box art for the first couple of Sonic games where there's just like random squiggly lines, triangles, and circles everywhere. The soundtrack also does its job with great ease, providing the player with cute tracks like this. Or hectic short bops like the boss theme. Like Dreamland 2, we're accompanied by animal companions, but this time there's 3 new ones for a total of 6, and each animal friend offers 2 alterations to Kirby's gameplay. The first change is maneuverability, like how Coo the owl allows us to fly against wind easily, or how Kind the fish lets us swim underwater with greater control. The second change is copy abilities. The newer Kirby games give the player 4, sometimes 5, or even more moves with each copy ability, which is awesome. But back in these early days, Kirby could usually only do 1 attack with the copy ability, which means the animal friends offer some much appreciated variety. I really love some of the combos here, like if you have the spark ability and use Coo the owl, you can just rain down lightning on enemies, which is especially useful in enemies where the wind carries you across the screen, because you can basically just keep shooting lightning down on everything underneath you. I like a lot of the ideas shared in this trilogy, like how it doubles down on the cuteness aspect of Kirby, or how you have to collect a bunch of these little stars to get an extra life, which means the game isn't constantly shitting out 1-ups to you. And because you don't heal between levels, and the only food item that gives you more than 1 unit of health is a Maxim tomato, the game might actually chip through your lives at certain points. What's always been nice about Kirby games is you can really choose your pace. If you want to just burst through the levels, beat up enemies, and beat the game, you can do that in a couple of hours. But of course, there's always the challenge of going for the 100% completion, which means solving puzzles with your copy abilities and making sure you have the right ones at the right time. In the later games, there's a lot of shit to do if you want to get 100%, which is why I love a game like Crystal Shards, where all you need to do is get the shards, but they're not always easy to find or obtain. Dreamland 3 opts for something called Heart Stars. In each level, except for the boss levels, there's an NPC at the end of it who will give Kirby a Heart Star if he completes a certain task for them. For example, in the first level, Kirby will get a Heart Star from a flower if he didn't step on or damage any other flowers in the level. It's an interesting idea, especially for a 2D platformer, because this essentially means that every level has a side quest. But this also means that the game is sometimes shrouded in obscurity, and it's easy not to know what to do or to make a simple mistake. It also makes the game flow at a slower pace, which kinda sucks because the game is already a little heavy feeling at times. I thought it was just me, but when I was looking up this game online and seeing what people were saying about it, a lot of them agreed with me that Kirby just felt a little too slow. And it's funny, I replayed Kirby 64 right before I played this game, and a lot of people say Kirby is slow in 64, but even his walk speed is just a tiny bit faster than it is in Dreamland 3. And unfortunately, that walk speed is even more obnoxious in desert levels where the sand slows you down even more. But the obscurity of the Heart Stars and the slowness are probably the only 2 negatives I have to say about this pleasant little experience. When it released, the game got some middling reviews. Nothing terrible, but noticeable for a Nintendo game, especially for one of their top series. People were just over 2D games at the time, which is probably why games like Yoshi's Story and Mischief Makers, despite coming out on the N64, got similar reviews. Kirby's Dreamland 3 isn't my favorite Kirby game, or even my favorite of the Dark Matter trilogy. I think my favorite thing about Dreamland 3 was just seeing how many ideas would carry over to Kirby 64. Some of the bosses are similar, the end stage minigame is similar, there's a painter girl, but this one's kind of more pissed off for some reason. They ditched the animal companions for Kirby 64, but it was just cool to see them get another chance at a game like this. It's still a good time that I feel like gets overlooked. If you have the cheap version of Switch Online like me, or you have the expansion pack, you can play it right now. It only takes like 3 or 4 hours to beat. Like any other Kirby game, it's really nice to play if you're feeling kind of sad or down in the dumps. It's a game that's meant to make you smile, and for me, it did that pretty easily.